Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's 8 Minute to Health discussion. If you haven't signed up already, please head over to 8minuteshealth.com. Basically, what it is it's 4 weeks of free emails, and each week we focus on a different topic. This week we are focusing on mental health, which, as anyone who knows me will understand, this is near and dear to my heart because I am a social worker and have worked as a therapist. So today we're going to be talking with Nick. I'm just adding him to the now. And so Nick is today on the importance of community, both in terms of health and mental health. Hi, Nick. How are
Hi,
you today?
good. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Good.
Just telling our viewers that we are going to talk about community. And I
Beautiful.
think that's a really big focus of what you're doing. And it's always been something that's been really important to me as well.
Beautiful. Yeah, no, it is. It's something that through my journey in life, after 47 years, I found that, I was really connected when I was a kid, playing sports, and then, life happens and you grow up, and I just found after certain challenges, I became more and more disconnected. Technology and work and everything just makes it easier to disconnect until you end up all by yourself with huge mental health and addiction issues.
So your journey, you found that the more disconnected you were to community, the more likely you were to get the mental health and addiction
You know,
struggle.
yeah, I think it's Johan Hari who says the opposite of addiction is connection, and
Mm.
and that, yeah, for me, mental health issues were depression, social anxiety. And one of the coping mechanisms through dealing with that was, have a drink, and then that just led to more drinking and more isolation, more shame, and then not having the ability to stop. So, I think they're all kind of tied hand in hand with mental health wellness, mental health issues, and there's a lot of things out there, Jody, that help people, but I found that connecting with a bunch of like a small group of men who understood what I was going through
Mm.
created a connection and accountability to go through with a recovery process. So,
And
yeah,
I was going to say, like, do you think that you would have been able to do it without them? Like, how did that change things for you having that connection?
I don't think I tried it. I tried to, like, to go through a recovery process by myself, um, and join in certain things, certain meetings that would happen. But I always thought it was a self-help kind of thing, and
Mm.
I didn't really realize that it's about community and to become, to get on a proper path of recovery and to follow it. I needed to be accountable to at least one or two other guys. So that's what helped me an awful lot, and it's gotten me to a pretty comfortable position in my recovery, and in form of kind of looking back at my past and when I had true connection and bonds from the time that I was young, and then losing those, and to now, again at 47, feeling those connections I had when I was a kid, and it's a beautiful thing, and that's what I want to try to, and even with you in the yoga classes that you did with us and stuff, it's just the getting people together, doing positive things, and then going for coffee or a bite to eat after.
And I think you raised, like, as you're talking, you raised a really interesting point, which is I was connected as a kid. And then there's this period in kind of middle adulthood. And I think if you're not partnered with somebody, if you don't have a family, or even if you do, you can still be quite lonely, especially in today's society, right? It's kind of a society built for two. Um, and if you don't have that partnership, or if you're struggling, it can be really, really lonely. Um, and I think we see that with, we're moving more towards screens. So a lot of screen time, we're moving into big houses and compared to countries that are developing. And so we're further away from our neighbors to begin with. I think that's kind of symbolic of what's happened to our community as well.
I agree, and there's no more alienating places nowadays than big metropolises like Toronto or London, England, where I've lived in both cities, and with millions of people around me, and it's not like I was a social I was socially inept. I mean, I was okay in places. I just still felt lonely. And I think that again ties into, a mental health issue with depression and anxiety. So, I could be in a room full of people and maybe feel probably the most lonely. And you're right, like I think now it's getting to be about 67 to 70% of the households in Toronto are single occupancy. So we're living in more of a singular life position without partners and stuff. And yeah, it's tough. It gets tough out there.
It does. And I think there's also a bit of shame. Like, I'm not allowed to say that I'm lonely because I'm not supposed to be lonely because I have a great job, because I kind of have friends. And so, what right do I have to be lonely?
Yeah,
And I think it's really hard for people to come out and say, like, hey, I'm single and I'm kind of lonely.
yeah.
Like, what do I do about that?
I think, and
You
again,
know?
the older you get, there's all these kind of preconceived cultural ideologies that are put on us from the time that we're in high school. You've got to get married, you've got to have kids, you've got to have the white picket fence and the two cars, and even to the point where I had those things, it wasn't enough. And again, that tied into kind of this mental wellness that I had. Physically on the outside, I was okay, but inside I wasn't, and up here I wasn't.
Mm.
So again, it's through finding connections and accountability that gives me the incentive to continue through a recovery process, and it's something that I know that I'm trying to do with my Retribe organization and stuff, which is to get people connected.
Yeah, and I think you've hit on a really important point, right? Which is like I focus on health and mental health, and you've kind of taken the mental health piece and said, this is really important part of recovery is having that recovery, or I don't even know if that's the right word, right? It's a really important part of being healthy emotionally and mentally is having that community connection to support you through that. And I think from a health perspective, we also see the same thing. I mean, if you look at a lot of the blue zones, I know there was a study done about blue zones like longevity, so the areas of the world where people live the longest. And one of the big factors was community.
Mm.
And a lot of those places, like one is Costa Rica, one is an island in Japan, and they're really close to each other. And I found that in my travels, the countries that I feel the closest to now are the ones where I was part of a local community or even an expat community where, Wednesday nights we would get together and it was called Karoga in
Mm.
Swahili, which means to stir. And so we'd literally stir a pot of curry every Wednesday night. And it was such a great thing to know that Wednesdays I would get to connect with that group of friends. And then coming back to Toronto, coming back to the Western world, it was like everyone was too busy with their work and their job and commuting and all of these things
Mm.
that the idea of getting together once a week, even if it was on the weekend, is like, forget that,
Yeah.
right? Like, I need to plan 3 weeks in advance to get you into my calendar.
I think it's the pressures of today's society. Like, a lot of people have time to do things individually and do a lot of self-help, but they don't have a lot of time to do community help. And, again, looking back at Retribe and where it kind of comes from is that we've always been part of tribes. Definitely in the last kind of 30,000 years since our DNA has been the way it is. If we weren't part of a tribe, we would freeze to death, starve to death, or get beaten by a saber-toothed tiger or something like that. So, we all had roles in those tribes, and we've lost that. We've lost that sense of belonging to someone, to being
Yeah.
self-worth, not just going to the gym to look good, but and be physically fit, but to be part of something where mentally you feel well. So I think if people just Google physical fitness, you got great pictures of people working out and doing yoga. But when you Google mental wellness or mental fitness, I mean, there's people with their like looking all depressed. And I mean, it makes sense to me that if you go to the gym to work out your biceps and your triceps, why can't we do things together to work on our mental wellness, where it's not just
Mm-hmm.
about depression. This is about connection and feeling a sense of need by a group of people.
Yeah. Yeah. I think when mental wellness is huge. And I think you raise a point in terms of like depression and those kinds of things are naturally isolating, right? If you have anxiety, you don't want to hang around people.
Yeah.
If you're depressed, you don't want to hang around people. And so it kind of further, it's a bit of a slippery slope, right? Like you start to have those feelings and then you start to push people away.
Yeah.
Um,
And we
And I
found that,
mean, that can also be a huge part of health issues as well. And then just going back to even what you were saying with, health and connecting, even if you're trying to do like healthy eating, right? Like trying to do healthy eating on your own is really hard.
yeah,
Like when I moved to paleo, you're going out for dinner with all these people that are ordering like share platters
mm,
of gluten stuff or like nice desserts, and you're just like, oh, can I do this? Forget it. I'm just gonna have some gluten. I don't care.
yeah,
But if you have a group of people that are, eating relatively healthy, like I have a good group now, and it's like, oh, check out my sweet potato nachos,
yeah,
and the
yeah.
conversation changes, and it becomes a lot easier to kind of live that lifestyle when you found, and I know this isn't necessarily a mental health community, but even a health community that kind of is all about wellness, right?
I agree completely. And we found that, like, let's say people with social anxiety have a hard time getting somewhere. That's why, Meetup is an amazing organization and they've got amazing groups, but they've got a huge fail rate because people will want to go and do something, but with social anxiety, they'll get halfway there and then they'll be like, I'm going home. So when people
Yeah.
connect through the fact that they've got social anxiety or depression, or they're dealing with a bereavement or a breakup or a divorce, connections are kind of made faster to then go
Yeah.
ahead and deal with going to a cooking class together, or going to a restaurant, or going bowling, or going to a meditation class, something that will help them with whatever they're dealing with. If they're going with two or three other people who are going through the same thing, bonds are made really fast. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a really, I kind of always saw it as a window, right? Like your social window is open or if it's closed. And you're totally right. When you're vulnerable, you're looking for that connection, you're looking for that validation of experience. And when you find people that have a similar experience, in a sense, it's like self-validating,
Mm,
right? Oh my gosh, I'm not alone. Oh my goodness, these feelings that I'm feeling aren't crazy. Or,
yeah.
oh my gosh, like, I'm not the only one to experience this. And then that opens the door for more communication about an honest and authentic communication about what's really going on.
I think when there's no greater cup three words than I get it. When you're sitting there,
Mm-hmm.
you're talking to someone, and they're talking about their problems, and you can look at them in the eye and say, "I get it, man. I get what you're going through, and let's go for a coffee, or let's go to the gym together, or something like that." The bonds through our struggles are really strong.
Yeah. And so Retribe is trying to um, almost create that pathway, like a bit like Meetup, but a little bit more defined than Meetup, right?
It's kind of like a little buffer between Meetup and the people. And as Retribe's been evolving, it's been like let's kind of look at anybody who's going through a life struggle and help them connect with others. But that's a big thing to create. So, and it
Yeah.
might be a little bit out of my wheelhouse right now. So I'm really concentrating on my story and people who identify that with that. So I was really active as a kid playing sports. Then I played professional sports. And then when I stopped playing professional sports, I was involved in sports broadcasting. So I was
Mhm.
always involved in sport. And then
There's your community, right?
yeah, so the second I stopped getting involved in sport, my life changed. And I didn't quite
Mm.
understand it, but I lost the spirit of competition and I lost connection with people who understood me. And then I went on a 15-year journey all around the world looking for that connection again.
Mm.
And it just was never strong. And then again, it led me to, the depths of depression and alcohol abuse. So now that I can see that, then that's what I'm going to try to do is connect, help people connect from the time that they stop playing their sports to where they are now. So then, I think we were talking like if you could have been like an amazing athlete in high school, and then all of a sudden you went on your life journey, and then it was a bit of a struggle, and you recognize now maybe through people at Retribe that, hey, from the time I was in high school, I was happy with life and it was good because I played sport or I was involved in sport. And hopefully now you might be in your 30s or your 40s and you can start to connect with other people who feel the same way and start doing stuff together.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And making it okay, I think, to connect, right?
that's right.
Um, and I think you're starting to see that even on dating apps. There's that option for friends, like find a friend, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
because it's a lonely world out there.
yeah.
And I know just that's for me, I've traveled a lot and my draw to travel was often the community.
Yeah.
And I lived in Africa probably, about over 10 years ago now. And that was still one of the closest communities I've ever had.
Mm.
And I still talk to those people. And I think just because I saw them every day, and the idea of community and connection was just very different than it is here. And it was both a local community as well as the expat or foreign, like a lot of foreigners as well. It was both. And that just made life so much richer.
It does. It does.
Yeah.
I truly believe that we're tribal people and we need connection with people around us. So, you know, keep doing what you're doing. I'll keep doing what I'm doing, and then we'll try and maybe get you in town for another yoga class because that was a blast.
Yeah, that was really great.
It was fun. Everyone had a really good time, and again, it was like me and a couple of the other guys. That was our, my sixth, I think, yoga. One of the other guys first, and
I know, it was
yeah.
so great. I was a yoga virgin.
Yeah. So, and those are the things you just walk away from and you go like, if we have the ability to kind of keep doing things like that once a week, then it's helping people change. And I like to like we have a couple of different slogans that we're working on, but it's really the power of change comes in the connection with others. And that's what we're kind of working on. People, we want to change, we want to grow, we want to become better people. We're knowing that we're living longer. We want to stay connected. So we want to change. And I think the largest section of a bookstore that's growing right now is self-help. And to me, that's kind of sad because I don't want to read books on self-help. I want to read books on connecting with others so that we can change
Uh,
together. Too much self
that's
in the world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a really great point. And you also, to go back to the yoga virgin for a second, I'm not sure if that individual maybe wouldn't have come to a yoga class without the community going, right? It creates this like avenue to experience new
Yeah.
things.
Well, it helped that his girlfriend loves yoga and she came.
Oh, yeah, that would help.
Yeah. Yeah. Good.
Okay,
All
well,
right.
thank you so much for talking with me today,
No
Nick.
problem. Let's keep doing it.
And I
Let's get this rolling. We'll try to make it regular. More people will kind of start getting on board and things like that and sending comments. And this is just a process too of change and growth, and it's a wonderful thing that you're doing. So keep doing it. Keep it up.
Oh, oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm all about, I think when we think about health, sometimes we just narrow it into food. And I mean, I do specialize in gut health, so obviously food is it's super important to me, and it's super important to gut health as well. But when we look at health, it's very holistic, right? And mental health is a big part of it. And it's been a big part of my healing journey is dealing with mental health stuff. And community is a big part of mental health, right? And so you can't really talk about health. You can't talk about gut health without talking about like what's your mental health and what's your community supports like. And so that's why I'm pulling in people from like all kind of angles of the health field because it's all connected.
Yeah.
And I think, we've forgotten that because we have the specialist in this and the doctor in that and the mental health specialist in this, and they're all really great. But I think, sometimes we need to also be conscious of every single piece of the puzzle and not just one.
Beautiful.
All right. Have a lovely long weekend, Nick.
You too, Jody. We'll talk soon, okay?
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Bye.